This episode of Sports Spectrum's podcast is presented by our brand new 52-week Increase devotional. If you're looking for a gift to give someone, that Jesus-loving, sports-loving person in your life, consider the Increase 52-week devotional, inspiring stories of faith from the world of pro sports. And each week of the Increase 52-week devotional, it's focused on a different athlete or sports figure, and their words are taken from an interview that they did right here on Sports Spectrum's podcast. And the idea is these stories and testimonies that they share are woven together with a biblical topic that anyone, sports fan or not, can relate to. And each story, each week, will help you along in your faith journey and allowing Christ to increase in your life. Thus, the Increase 52-week devotional. It's available right now on Amazon. You can get it there, or the best place to purchase is at theincrease.com. And when you're there at theincrease.com, check out all of the great resources available, including our new store that's there. And you can get the 52-week Increase devotional right there at theincrease.com.
Welcome to Sports Spectrum, where we bring Jesus back into the conversation. Here's your host, former ESPN producer, Jason Romano.
And welcome to the show, everybody. I am Jason Romano. This is the Sports Spectrum podcast. My email address, jason@sportspectrum.com. If you'd like to reach me, maybe you have a guest idea, a topic you want us to discuss, or someone to feature on Sports Spectrum as we bring Jesus into and keep Jesus into the sports conversation, you can email me, jason@sportspectrum.com. We got a great conversation today with Janese Constantine. Janese is the women's assistant basketball coach at the University of Alabama. She's also married to Paul, who is a member of Alabama's football strength and conditioning staff. So both Janese and her husband Paul are with the University of Alabama, Roll Tide. And she was, back in the day, the Gatorade Player of the Year in Indiana in high school in 2004, played collegiately at Wisconsin for 4 seasons, was a 3-time All-Big Ten selection, played professionally in Ukraine, Switzerland, and Iceland. We didn't even talk about her professional career overseas, but since then she's gone on to coaching. She spent 4 seasons at the University of Indiana as an assistant and then joined Alabama in June of 2020. And last year, in her first season, she helped guide the Crimson Tide to their first NCAA women's basketball tournament appearance in more than 2 decades. Janese has a great story. She's got a great heart for people, and she leads with Jesus in front. I loved this conversation with Janese Constantine, and she joins us here today on Sports Spectrum. Take a listen. Janese Constantine is our guest here on Sports Spectrum. Hi, Janese. How are you?
I'm good. How are you, Jason?
Man, I'm good. It's funny. I'm going to be completely transparent in the recording. I messed up your name twice. In the beginning, I asked you your first name, pronounce it, and then we started recording, and we got the last name finally right. So it's Janese Constantine with Alabama, and I finally got it right. How many people get that last name and pronounce it Constantine like I did? I have to imagine some. I'm not the first, right?
All the time. Like more. I'm not sure how many people have done it right. I'm trying to be funny. I've had to correct my own parents before. Like I'm like, excuse me, that's not how you say my name.
Well, my wife's maiden name is pronounced Mangoin, but it's spelled Mangione. And so when I first met her, I'm like, and she's like, no, it's Mangoin. I'm like, that doesn't. It's like Brett Favre. It's not spelled right, that last name. But we got your last name, Constantine. We got it, Janese. I do want to start with, you have such a unique role. And we're in the heart of college basketball season now into 2022. What does a game day look like for you? Just a typical game day as you prepare. And I could be talking about home life because you're a mom and a wife. I could be talking about your spiritual life. I could just be talking about you as a coach. What does a typical game day look like for you?
So I mean, I'll go with a home one. And it always just depends on what day of the week, because a lot of things are based off of my husband's lifting schedule and things of that nature. But
Yeah.
for the most part, in the morning is what I try, and is when I set aside time to do my devotionals. I have one of my old friends of mine from Indiana is still a great accountability partner for me, and so we share Bible devotions on our Bible app, and we try to do those every morning with each other. Because I mean, you know how it is, human life, and no excuses, but sometimes times get long, or you go stretches, and I haven't done one, or we had some grief that hit our family back in May with the loss of my father in love. And so, that was hard. And so there's some mornings I just didn't want to, whether it was sad or things like that. And so just having that accountability partner, and my sister friend that's at Indiana right now just helped me accountable to that. So I've been getting a better routine now in the mornings, just before I start my day, just try to get it done right then and there, before my boys get up, and, and I'm just on full-time mom mode. So that's that. And then after that is when I usually try to get myself ready, because if my boys get up before me and I'm not ready, it is literally 30 or 45 extra minutes that is taxed on entire morning. And that usually just throws me off. So I try to get up before them to get ready, and then I get them ready and I drop them off. Coming to work, do a couple things. If it's my scout or not my scout, just trying to prepare for the game, some last minute things, or recruiting calls, just kind of busy work that maybe you don't get done. Then we have shoot around. And we do shoot around, and then we do pregame meal. And then I take some downtime in between then. Sometimes I work out, sometimes I don't. And then we have what we call shooting groups before the game starts. So we go into just individualized shooting groups for different sets of players on our team. So instead of the whole team out there shooting for the whole time, where you get one shot every 30 seconds, because balls are flying everywhere, and then somebody knocks your ball out, things of that nature. We set aside some time. So it takes about 45 extra minutes. And we go to warm-ups and things like that, and then it's game time. And so that's usually the hardest part, is just everything that goes into the game time, because I am a stick. I'm much like, I want to play.
Right.
And so the waiting is always just kind of like, but.
Yeah, no, that's good.
Well, that's kind of my routine, Obviously, I like to listen to music on game days. If we're on the road, like I said, I work out on the road usually, and just try to get some things done that sometimes you don't always get done.
What are we rocking? What are we listening to, Janese?
Usually, so I have a playlist on my album. It's called Turn Up for Jesus. It's usually, I love Lecrae, Andy Mineo, KB, 1KPU. Love it. Like, that's my favorite. So I usually listen to that. And then there are times I'm still an R&B girl. I was born in late 80s, 90s or so I still love R&B. I'll listen to some hip hop, just depending. I'll turn on like a Pandora has a pregame hip hop station I like to listen to, which it's a lot of the old stuff, but it's clean, so that's good for me. But obviously when I get on the court with my girls, we have a DJ, and so they're rocking it, and I like listening, just anything with energy, anything with good beats. But my go-to is, like I said, my Lecrae and playlist, Andy and KB, and I love that. And Lecrae just actually dropped a new album that I love. So.
Yeah, those guys are great. They've both been on I should say Lecrae and Andy Mineo have both been on the show, and they're just great guys. Yeah, great sports guys. Yeah.
I've been to so I went to a concert. This was probably 8 years ago.
Okay.
It was in Indianapolis. It was Lecrae. Is when he came out with his Anomaly album. It was phenomenal. And Andy Miller was with him. He came and he was his guest, and it was phenomenal. I would love to, if 116 was on tour somewhere and I could make it. I've always tried to, so I have another friend who's a video person with the Memphis Grizzlies, and they were in Memphis a couple weeks ago, and she sent me a Snapchat, but they would always be in different places sometimes, like when we're traveling, we'd be like, it just never worked out, because trust me, I'm always trying to go.
Yeah. Well, that 116 crew is legit, and
they're phenomenal.
Their music's amazing. Their talent is amazing, but their heart.
Their stories, yeah. If you like,
correct.
I follow a lot of them on social media, and just to hear them talk through some of their stories and just the realities that they go through. Whether it's loss, whether it's marriage, whether it's children, or just life. It's really amazing. I mean, they bring it down to such a transparency level. And then they make good music, and so
yeah, and they're pointing to Jesus.
What'd you say?
I said they're pointing to Jesus too.
Absolutely. And just, obviously in a different way that different people can relate to. But then also, and I listen to this more on like in maybe the mornings of game day and not before. I'm not gonna lie, before the game, I usually need the energy, but I love like elevation worship and Maverick music and just old school gospel, Kirk Franklin. Like I'll listen to those, but that's usually, like I said, that's usually not before the game.
Yeah, it's hard to listen to Talking to Jesus by Maverick City, or
Yeah,
whatever it is, elevation.
if I'm listening to Gyra or Gardens in the Grave, like that puts me in a way different place than I'll be trying to get ready for a game. But
no, that's good. That's
no,
good.
I do. They actually had a concert in Nashville about a month or so ago. I had some friends that went, and I was like, oh my God, I want to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm just glad that there's concerts again too. So hopefully in 2022 here, we'll be attending a lot more. You mentioned your husband's, you just kind of subtly mentioned your husband's lifting schedule when you were talking about kind of your game day routine. It's actually a lot more than that because your husband and you work together. He's actually Alabama's football team strength and conditioning, or on their staff with their strength and conditioning team. What's that been like? Kind of, because you're probably not seeing each other too often, but you're both working together, even though he has his things and you have your things. Like,
and it's funny like? Because a lot of people, they say you work together. It's like, it really doesn't feel like it though, because
we work at the same company. How's that? Or
the
same school.
Like it's almost like we work at the same school, but like we're, and even when we were at Indiana together, it was the same thing. Like our offices are not in the same spot. And so he's in a completely different building than I am. Yeah. So to see each other, we have to kind of coordinate it. Like I may go over to his office sometimes. He comes over here in passing. We really don't see each other. We used to meet up more for lunch, different times where our schedules are, they used to practice in the morning in Indiana. They practice in the afternoons here. So our schedules are a little bit off. But yes, it's just like we work together, but we really don't work together. But it is a phenomenal opportunity. We both love what we do. It is extremely though challenging to maintain just this lifestyle with both of our kids and how active we like to be present in our kids' lives and coming to each other's games. So like right now, like it's probably November is the hardest month usually because we're both in season.
Yeah, you're overlapping. Yeah.
December is a little bit slower because at least they only have like the SEC championship and then there's usually one bowl game. But it's a challenging. So actually my parents will come down and help me during this stretch. But we use a lot of babysitters. We thrive, and it takes a village to raise your kids. We have a strong, God has really blessed us with a strong community down here. Our women, she works in our women's basketball office, our administrative assistant. She helps me out a ton. Our graduate manager helps me out a ton. And then just when I come to the office, like if I have to bring them in real quick, like if I run and go get them from daycare, but I have to come back to the office, the players, the managers, the other coaches, I mean, they all just step in and pitch in and help out, Yeah. And then we go over to my husband's office sometimes, and the boys, my oldest son loves it. He loves to run around over there. He even points out if we're in there, Daddy work. And so it's challenging. It takes a lot of communication, and I'm usually pretty good with it. I drop the ball every now and again. Like I think it was a week or so ago, I forgot to tell him I had a Zoom in the evening, and so he got home, and I was like, here's the kids. I got a Zoom. And I felt really bad. But he handled it like a champ. And then I have another Zoom like tomorrow night. So I'll make sure I was like, just a reminder. So it's constantly checking by. So every night we pretty much talk about, so like usually on the Sundays we lay out the week, but then every night we're like, hey, is this still happening? Is something changed? Because things change. Stuff happens,
How old are your boys?
2 and 6 months.
6 months and 2 years. So you're going through it right now, just, as a mom, a good going through it.
Yeah.
I should say as a mom.
I drink a lot of caffeine.
I can imagine.
Yeah, I do. The 2-year-old is pretty good. I mean, he's not this year sleeping. It's my 6-month-old with his sweet self. He's a great baby though. And I love, he was up last night. He's teething though. He's teething right now. That's
exciting. Now, well, I guess my thought process was, as you and your husband are embarking on this journey of careers and certainly just being husband and wife, what were the conversations like when you decided to have children, and you wanted to become a mom
Yeah.
and knowing the challenges that come. I'm not saying you can't do it. Obviously you're making
Right.
it work and doing great, but the
Right.
challenges that come when you add children into the mix for jobs that you and your husband both have. What were the
It was,
conversations like?
so a lot of it was faith-based, is like, we'll just stay in constant prayer about it.
Yeah.
Because we know that it'll work out. And that was just kind of things we didn't want our lives to dictate us stopping having a family or us growing our family.
That's
We
good.
knew we wanted a family, and there are times, I'm not gonna lie, I want another one. And every day he's like, "You what?" I'm like, "I don't know what's wrong with me." But we did. We just said, we'll figure it out. So the conversations usually came about with, like, early in our dating, we talked about, because we were obviously at the same place. And we were like, and everybody, "This is never gonna happen again. Who's gonna leave their career?" And we were like, we'll just trust God. We'll trust God that what'll happen. And crazy enough, when he got the offer to Alabama, it was a really big faith test, really big, because when we left IU, I left without having a job, and I left a place that I had truly grown to love. That was my family. My oldest was born there. He got to travel with us. He came to work with me every day. And I was 45 minutes from home. I was 45 minutes from my family.
Yeah.
And I was coming here without a job. So you're talking about financial differences and things of that nature, and just not having a job. And I'm not a stay-at-home kind of mom. And like, it was like, oh my God, we had one car. Like, it was wild.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I knew we had always said we wanted to support each other's dreams. And coming to Alabama for football was, again, it's kind of a no-brainer, right? Like, what do you get better than that,
Right.
And so, yeah, we came, and 3 weeks later, Coach Christie had a position open and offered it to me, and the rest is history. And so with that, it was just more so of we'll just have to rely on the people that are here, and God has continued to place people in our lives that give us a whole lot of help and a whole lot of support.
That's good. We're talking to Janese Constantine on Sports Spectrum. Your Instagram says Jesus Lover at the very end of it, which has other things too in there. But I love that you put it on your Instagram, and there's an intentionality about placing that on a social media feed. It lets people know your priority, lets people know where you stand and things that you care about. So let's intersect the conversation. We do that. We've already kind of done that a little bit with faith. So tell me a little bit more about your walk with Christ, its importance in your life, and kind of how that guides you each day.
Yeah, I mean, so I always say I feel like I don't have a wow story, but then as I continue to grow, I'm like, but I do, because Jesus is wow, right? And so when I say I don't have a wow story, I used to say that, meaning I grew up in the church. I grew up with a home that prayed, a home of faith. Like, I had all that growing up. I know a lot of times when I say wow story, sometimes people don't get that until they go to college. People don't get that until they get married. And then it's like, and I used to think that was wow, because I'm like, wow, like, you didn't know Jesus until you're 25.
I was 27. Yeah.
And no, seriously, and I'm always like,
yeah,
wow. Like, I'm like, wow, because I think it's such a, like, I grew up with it. Like, it was embedded in me. It was kind of natural, right? Like, I just knew that's what I was supposed to do. Now, as I got older, I started to have my own relationship, and I got to know what I call Jesus for myself. I didn't rely on what someone else was telling me. But when I think about someone as an adult, I'm like, no, you really, like, it was brand new to you. Right now, I always think how cool that kind of is, right?
Yeah.
But I also know that there's stories behind when you didn't know Christ and how hard that had to be. And so I say all that to say, I like I said, I had that journey all throughout this my whole life, high school, college. I've been involved in FCAs, AIAs, prayer groups. Several years ago, me and a former coach, he's actually now the head coach at Charleston Southern, Clarice Garcia, we started a thing called Kingdom Coaches, where we would get together in July, and we would pray. We would pray before we went to gym. So if the first game started at 8, we would meet at like 7:15. And if you want, we just stood outside and we prayed. We prayed for the day. We prayed for conversation that we had, if they would lead us to Christ with someone else. We prayed for protection of the player. We just prayed.
great.
We did it at different stops at different cities, and it grew for a little bit. I'm not gonna lie, it's kind of fallen off a little bit now. So don't go looking us up or anything like that and expecting to be anything great. It is not as active as it needs to be. And I just whether it's lives or coaching changes and things of that nature, but those are just journeys that we've had and stops that we've done. But everywhere I've been blessed to work for bosses who allow me to walk in my faith in coaching, allow me to have conversations with players about my faith or their faith, and not try to push on anybody or anything like that. And I've continued to grow and evolve as a coach. I've continued to learn that there are going to be differences and things of that nature when I deal with my players. And there are going to be some that want to know about Jesus, and there are going to be some who don't. It doesn't make them bad people. It doesn't make them have a bad heart. They're in a different phase in their life. And then my job is, and what I consider, is planting seeds. And then at some point, maybe someone else comes along and waters them. Maybe they don't, but at the end of the day, what I want to show them is that the love of Christ can reach so many people, and the love for other people sometimes welcomes people to Christ. Maybe I don't talk about Christ right away, and I just try to love on them. I try to, nurture them. I try to hug them. I try to give them something that maybe they don't have at home. I've had players. I'm a big hugger, right? I'm big, and it's one of my players. I guess I'm a physical touch person too. And so one of my players, she's like, "You're always touching my shoulder." I was like, and I didn't even notice it yesterday. I was like, "Girl, come on." She's like, "See, look at." I didn't even notice I was doing it. But I've literally had players before, like at some point, kind of like not want to hug, but I can see their hesitancy, and I'm like, "Girl, what's wrong with you? Give me a hug." And they're like, "Coach Jay, I didn't grow up like that. Like, I didn't grow up hugging. Like, I didn't grow up here." Or like, I say I love you a lot. Like, right? Like I say, it's funny. I've literally almost hung up recruiting calls saying I love you because I'm so conditioned to telling people I love them before I hang up the phone, because I just never know when that may be the last conversation you have with someone, right?
Yeah.
And so I've had to catch myself literally, because I'm like, that would be awkward. But I tell my players that all the time. Like, I try to tell them I love them all the time. And some say it back, some don't. And I don't think some mean anything personally by it. I've grown to learn. Some of them like, "Coach, I didn't say that growing up." Like, nobody, we knew we loved each other. We wouldn't say, and so I'm always looking for ways for Christ to just use me. I always say, this is my platform. This is my ministry. And I let him use me how he wants in different situations. I am not perfect. I am not a perfect coach.
Yeah.
I have to ask for forgiveness all the time.
Same.
With a lot of things, but I think the girls know my heart. I think recruits and parents know my heart. And I think that I talk about it when I want, I tweet about it when I want, but I don't feel like I have to make that like the essence of, like, I don't want to be a pounder. Like, I'm not trying to like, beat you over the head. I just want to have a heart to love people. And I think through that is where the love of Christ evolves.
Is that how because every player is different. Every player has different backgrounds and different, not necessarily different beliefs, but different ways for you to reach them. You talked about having the hand on the shoulder for one athlete, and one of them says, "Wait a minute, I didn't grow up like that." So what is the way that you kind of work through loving people in the different ways that you would love them? Or is it the same, even though they're all different personalities?
I think you have to meet I think I have to, again, in my older stages of coaching, I've been doing this now for 10 years. I was kind of a hard head coach when I was younger. I just thought you had to yell all the time. I thought you had to be tough to get respected and just make them run and like do all that kind of stuff. And I've just grown from that. And I do believe in meeting them where they are. I think you have to. They're still people. They're still humans. They're 18 to 22. They have emotions. They go through stuff. They're stressed. They don't know how to handle things all the time. And so I think if somebody didn't grow up with someone touching them or telling them that they love them or giving them hugs and things like that, I don't want to force that, and I tell them all the time. So if that's not what you're comfortable with, then maybe you like handshakes. Maybe you like that. Maybe you like the fist. Maybe you like the chest bump. Maybe you don't like anything. And maybe you just want me to smile and say, "What's up, girl? You doing good today?" I make it a point every time before we start practice. I go through every day before practice. I go and give them all a high five. while they're stretching, just to let them know, like, hey, I'm ready to go. That you ready to go? Let's go. Let's get it. And it's just my chance to try to have my energy be contagious onto them. And it sometimes gives me a pulse of how that person's doing. Sometimes it's simple. When they used to, what's up, coach? Today they like, I'm like, oh, what's wrong?
Yeah.
What's going on? And sometimes that leads to, I'm okay. I'm like, no, it's just sometimes that gives me a pulse. So, okay, this is about to be a different day for this kid, and then sometimes that leads to me pulling them in my office after practice, or, giving them a little grace throughout practice. Maybe I don't yell as much or things like that. And so I just think I've really tried to mature in that sense of learning each individual. And again, I'm not perfect at it. I still fail.
If you were, you wouldn't probably be on this show, because I haven't met a perfect person yet.
Yeah, I always try to make sure I say that, because I think even with sometimes our desires of our hearts, you still are able to grow and to learn. And I always say, and sometimes I try to pay attention to my intent, but also I try to pay attention to my impact, and I try to pay attention to sometimes, and it's funny, I don't always mean things. Like my intent may be good, it may be in my intent, but my impact that I had on someone else may not have been accepted the way I intended it for it to go. And so I'm just always self-checking myself. I'm always checking my boxes. I'm literally I probably overtalk to our players. And forgive me if I've called them kids on the show. I don't mean it in the sense of that. When I say kids, I usually say it in terms of like they're my, like I have kids now myself, right? And so like I just like they're mine, like, right? Like I get to love them, like I don't mean it from their maturity or anything like that. I mean it from the sense of like you mine, like you my girl, like let's go, I got you. And so I'm always talking to them. I'm always asking them, how can I be better for you? Because how I can be better for player A may be different than how I can be better for player B. And so I'm just always trying to have those lines of communication open. I'll pray with our kids if they want it, some don't want it, or sometimes I'll say, hey, do you want to pray? Sometimes they say, no, coach, I'm not ready for that. Okay, cool, I got us. Sometimes they do, sometimes they want to, and so I think you just have to, every situation is different, every day is different. And I think I have to allow God every day to lead me in the way that he wants it to go.
It makes me think about, because you were a kid once, right? Playing college ball. You played at Wisconsin, all Big Ten selection, had a good career there, and then went on to play pro. What do you think is the biggest difference from the time you were playing and kind of going through just the normal things that 18 to 22-year-old girls go through to where you are now as a coach, watching the 18 to 22-year-old and what they're going through compared to what you were going through when you were playing?
I think, and I don't want this to sound cliche, I do think the evolution of social media has really, really changed a lot. Yeah. It's changed the realm of how these players are, how they view themselves, how they view each other. We live in a huge, huge world of self-gratification, instant gratification, narcissism, my platform, my NLI, my likes, and it's totally opposite of what you try and preach and teach, right? Whereas it's weird. Like I've just always found it weird how much people post about themselves, win or lose too. I just think that's kind of so strange, right? Like when you lost a game, like you just went and hit, like you didn't want to be seen, like you wanted to crawl under, you wanted to crawl under a rock or something, or you just wasn't talked about like that. Now everybody does, win or lose. But now they got all these, they have to post because this company told them to, and they have to do this because the brand, and it's just like, it's different. Okay. I don't want to use the word weird, but it's different. And so I think you're constantly having conversations about team and about me versus we and about just image and self-confidence. And I will say a thing that I truly, truly believe either it existed when I played and wasn't talked about, or again, social media has changed the realm of it. But I think the issue of mental health has truly, truly become heavier.
Yeah.
Um, in recent, years. And again, it probably did exist, and maybe we were just conditioned to just keep going, or don't talk about it, or just get better, and so as an athlete, you're just trained like that, right? Whereas now, get help. Don't be afraid to talk about it. It can save your life. And I think it's true. Like, all that is true, and you just wonder why, like, what is it that causes these players of, again, and it's not even just 18 to 22-year-old, right? Like, now it's just like life.
Yes.
Even me at 35, like, you deal with stuff, right? Like, I shared earlier, like, losing my father in love back in May, like, I still grieve,
Of course.
and how I handle that now, it just depends. And it may be different. You may handle something different, or a player may have something going on in their home life that they don't talk about, or they had something that affected them 10 years ago. And I just think, again, what you hear and read on social media and self-care and it's all those things, maybe the awareness of it and the access to someone and the resources that we have just make it more present, And so I think you're always navigating those waters, and it makes every day challenging, but it also makes every day worth it.
Yeah, that's really well said. Well, my last question, Janese, this has been a great conversation. We asked this to a lot of our guests here on the show. What are you learning from God right now? As we're into 2022, it's a new year. So much has happened. You talked about the loss that you guys went through last year of your father-in-law, and then you got a new baby too, and you want to have more babies, and you got a great job and a great husband. What's kind of all that's you've gone kind of where God has brought you today? What's He been showing you and teaching you in the season of life that you're in?
I would say that His promises remain the same.
Yeah.
For as hard as that is, and if I'm just being completely transparent, losing my husband's dad was hard, because he's a man of faith. His whole family is a man. My husband's a man of faith. He was completely healthy. And just in the process, obviously, we prayed for healing and deliverance, and we just knew he'd make it, and he didn't.
Yeah.
And that was hard for us. And I think there are days where it's still hard for us, but through it all, God still continues to show us His grace, His mercy, and that His promises still hold true. And we wonder, why us, why this, why that, but like, God is still sovereign. He's still God. He's the same yesterday, today, and forevermore. His grace and mercies are still renewing. He's still is a forgiver of our sins, even in our anger, even in moments of our questioning, our doubt. And God, help me with this. It's not help me with my unbelief. I think He continues to show me. Like I said, my father-in-law passed, I think, 2 weeks before my baby was born. So where we had loss, we had gain.
Yeah.
And I have a healthy baby, and I have a healthy family. And so even though we experienced something hard, His promises just continue to show up and show out every day, because we got 60. He was in his 60s. And so there are people that lose their, it's so many ways you can spin it and think about it. And so you just have to sit. And again, I don't want to say that it's been easy.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say again, well, we don't have our moments of just tears. And like I say, grief is, and I'm learning about that, where grief is just, every day.
It's a process.
It's a process. With the holidays, it's a process. And so I just, I just truly believe that God every day just reminds me that he is still sovereign, and that he still has me in the palm of his hands.
Yeah, that's a great reminder there. Janese, thank you. Thank you for being here on the show. All the best to you. We'll have to get you back on. Maybe we'll do a husband and wife dual interview the next time and get you and Paul on. What do you think?
He's a extreme introvert. But we've done a podcast together before, and it actually worked out really well because he gets into it and we get into it and we go back and forth at each other and we support each other and we laugh.
I love it.
Yeah. So no, definitely let me know. We'd love to.
You got it. Thanks for being here on the show.
All right. Thank you for having me. And look, I got to say, roll tide, roll tide, roll tide. We got to go get this one coming up.
Absolutely.
Take care, Jason.
And super thankful for Janese Constantine for being here today on Sports Spectrum from the University of Alabama, as is her husband, Paul. And I wasn't kidding. I think it'd be fun to have both of them on a podcast, whether it's this one or maybe it's one of our Sports Spectrum Podcast Network shows like Table 40, which probably is a perfect fit to have Janese and Paul Constantine on with Matt and Leslie on the Table 40 podcast. If you haven't listened to the Table 40 podcast, by the way, it's just one of 4 or 5 shows that we have on this Sports Spectrum Podcast Network. We have a network of shows. You should go check them out. There's tons of different types of content. There's a show about giving back and serving. There's a teen chaplain show. There is Table 40, like I mentioned, which is more of kind of a husband and wife couples type show. So check them all out. You can go there at sportspectrum.com and click the podcast icon and see all of our shows. And, you can listen to them and subscribe everywhere podcasts are found. And it's a great way to just be encouraged. You know that our conversations with Sports Spectrum are always going to center around Jesus. That's what we do. That's who we are. We aren't ashamed of that. And really, when you think about Sports Spectrum, when you think about this podcast, we want to be a resource for you, a way for you to maybe introduce someone to Jesus or encourage them in their faith if they already have that relationship with Jesus. And I hope, like a conversation today with Janese, is one that you can share with someone and it will encourage them. So we appreciate you tuning in. Thank you so much. Again, go to sportspectrum.com for all of our content. It's all free and it's all available at our website, sportspectrum.com. And then tune in next time. We love you guys. Have a great rest of your day. Stay safe, and we'll see you soon.